Hey, Matt.
Hello.
How are you doing this fine, lovely day?
Not bad, strikes and
I
gutters.
don't care. Nobody
strikes
cares
and
about
gutters,
that. Let's
hills
talk
and
about
valleys.
movies. Let's
How
talk
about
about
you?
movies today.
What? I'm going to crosstalk. What do you want to talk about?
Was that a good show? That was a show, right? It doesn't matter. It
Crossfire.
doesn't matter.
The one that
Ooh,
Jon Stewart got
I remember
shut
playing that
down.
that board game, Crossfire. That was a lot of fun.
Crossfire.
Lost a
You
lot of those
get caught
balls.
up in the crossfire.
Oh, that was a song too. Okay,
Crossfire.
I don't think we're going to talk about that today, but what we will talk about is movies, because that's what we do here on the movie show.
What?
Yes,
I don't
indeed.
like movies.
All right,
Movies are dumb.
we give up. It's done. It's over. So to preview the show today, we've got things, and then stuff, and then other things.
And maybe a couple of things to talk about.
I would hope so. All on this episode of
Matt and
Crossfire. Oh, Batman. So this week, Tribeca had a little contest for people to change the way the cinema's being made, change the way movies are put together. And the winner of this contest was, of course, IBM's little Watson computer, who has figured out how to make trailers. Sizzle reels, if you will.
Can we stop making computers smarter?
Well, we're
Have they not
too
seen
far down
Terminator?
that road. We are gone down that road too far, too deep. We've talked before about computers writing screenplays, and we thought that was ridiculous. But to cut a trailer,
I want that to be the name of my autobiography.
that is a good one. But to cut a trailer, I mean, I think that's I have no problem with that at all. I think that's you can enter in things in the computer, algorithms, if you will.
No. I'm going to disagree with you on this for a couple of reasons. One, a very old friend of mine is a trailer editor, and he works very hard at his job. And I don't want to see people like him out of business.
So do McDonald's workers, too. They work hard at their job. That's one point.
Right, and we shouldn't be putting them out of business.
Why not?
Because they're human beings, and they need to earn a living.
Universal income.
I actually kind of agree with that. But also, I have trouble with computers making artistic decisions.
Oh, I agree completely, but studios are basically computers now. And they basically remake the trailers that you've seen before. And they basically go, at 3 seconds, this is going to happen. At 15 seconds, this is going to happen. And that's why I don't mind
and that's a problem.
the computers doing it. Right, well, I mean, how's it going to change?
We should go backwards because they're obviously using it too much. And, we talked earlier about Blow, that great trailer. If that wasn't for some crazy, probably on Blow, trailer editor, we wouldn't have gotten probably the greatest teaser trailer of all time. We wouldn't have gotten that. And if you want everything to be brown, like everything's a Transformers trailer, then fine, let's let these things cut them. But if anything, we need more human decisions being made.
I would love more human decisions being made, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Not unlike every movie poster is the same, every trailer is the same, and
that's not a good thing.
But how is that going to change? I just don't see the movie studios
Anarchy,
deciding to change.
Burn everything down. Let's go.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm down with that. But you know what? The last time I was down with that, we got Trump as president. So I don't know how good my burning things down choices are. It's...
Hey, if you got your way, things are burning to the ground. Yeah.
You're welcome, America. You are welcome. So, I mean, it's interesting. It's something new. I don't think it's going to take over everything. But again, I mean, if you're making the next Transformers movies, I see no reason why I can't let a computer do that.
It is going to sneak its way in.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's going to use an algorithm at a small trailer house that doesn't have a lot of money. They're going to pitch, the project, and they're going to way underbid because they don't have a staff. And it's going to happen. And someone's going to make a trailer that people really like, and then you're going to find out that was made by a computer. And then that's it. It's kind of like the second drones. Like they released a drone with, hey, we've got an HD camera and it has a gimbal and it's $2,000. Every single person who owned a helicopter just like slapped their heads onto the table because they were out of a job immediately. Overnight, an entire industry gone. And that's what's going to happen. And then it's going to move on to, we got all this metadata on these digital movies we're making. We already have computers that can figure out what people are saying in these clips. We already have computers that, programs that can sync these clips up. How long before they just start editing movies?
That's a good question. That horrifies me. You've
It
changed my
horrifies me.
mind.
I'm an editor.
You changed my mind. I want human beings to cut my trailers.
Yeah.
Final decision.
There you go.
Hmm.
I win.
Do 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 do. I think that was
What
more.
that?
That was like.
Were you trying to do the Twilight Zone?
I was a little bit trying to do Twilight Zone. Excuse me, but that's not even what we're talking about. Doesn't matter. We're talking about outer space movies.
I love outer space movies.
From the great beyond, that final frontier that we're never going to conquer because we live in Trump America.
Oh, Final Frontier, you actually named the worst Star Trek movie.
And you're welcome. And I didn't know that there were
Thank
names
you.
of Star Trek movies. I just thought there were 1, 2,
Yes.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
No, sir.
No,
sir.
See, I'm learning things already here today, people.
Got Star Trek, the motion picture.
Is William Shatner in
Star
every
Trek
one
2,
of
The
them?
Wrath of Khan, Star
Mhm.
Trek 3, Search for Spock, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, Star Trek 5, Final Frontier, Star Trek 6, Undiscovered Country. Then you have Star Trek Generations, Star Trek First Contact,
What about the Star Trek porn?
Insurrection, and
What is that,
Nemesis.
fifth?
And then you have just plain old Star Trek.
Mhm.
Then Star Trek Beyond Darkness, and then
Were they great outer space movies?
about half of them. Half of them are pretty good. What do you think is the best outer space movie?
Well, I mean, that's easy. We don't even have to
2001?
talk. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be easy. So it's everything after
Okay,
2001.
So you know, because there are a lot of great outer space movies before 2001.
No, I just mean on the scale of best of.
Oh, like that's kind of like, you know, who's the greatest basketball? Well, it's Michael Jordan.
Right.
Michael Jordan's the
and
greatest.
then everybody else is second.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So let's put 2001 on that pedestal where it rightfully deserves to
Should be, always will be.
Yeah. Let's talk about.
Oh, you
ones
know
that-
what? You didn't ask the question that you have to ask every time. What are our parameters for an outer space movie?
Oh yeah, the metric.
Do you have to be in outer space?
I think it needs to mostly take place not on Earth.
Okay, so E.T. is out.
Right, because that's just more of an alien movie, and if we want to get technical, it's I think more a coming of age story.
I can dig that.
Yeah.
Also, Close Encounters would be out in that scenario.
Close Encounters would be out. That's an alien conspiracy movie, and the best one because every time it's like someone should do a movie about Project Serpa. Oh, they did it.
Mhm.
Someone should do a movie about. Oh, that's in Close. Like Close Encounters just has everything.
Mhm.
Plus, it has Bob Balaban saying, "I'm a map maker."
Classic cinema right there.
So yeah, something that takes place not on Earth. It doesn't have to necessarily be in space all the time.
Okay.
So I'd put one of the best as 1956, I believe, Forbidden Planet.
Oh,
Forbidden
okay.
Planet was so ahead of its time, it's still impressive. Where you have the creature from the id and little things like, oh, they found an ancient alien civilization. They're all dead now. But look how weird the doors are. What did they look like? You never find out what they look like, but
Right.
you see they have these weird, like, triangular doors. So you're like, oh, we made our doors for us. What did they look like?
Right.
Some of the effects work is just incredible. Disney actually did the animation on the creature from the id. The Disney animators, they're amazing. They had things like hypersleep. They had things like warp drive. They had the idea of adamantium and unbreakable metal.
Mm.
Yeah, like all of these ideas that we love in sci-fi now really came from that movie. Most of them. And I think people talk about it like, oh, Robbie the Robot. It's like, okay, yeah, there's a lot more going on in that movie than just Robbie the Robot. That movie's fantastic.
This is something that I don't know, and you may not know either, but I'm going to ask, how does, certainly Americans love their outer space movies, but do outer space movies play as a whole internationally?
Here's the funny thing. Like, if you're talking about outer space movies, like real sci-fi, and I'm not counting Star Wars into this because Star Wars is more, fantasy since it's built on the whole hero's journey
Right.
kind of fairy tale thing.
Sure.
But if you're talking about real sci-fi, those do not do well here.
Oh, here?
Real sci-fi movies don't do well here in the States. When's the last time a true sci-fi movie that wasn't more an action movie, more fantasy, did really well? Moon raked in the money, right? Everyone saw Children of Men. I mean, they should have because it's the best movie made in the last 20 years. But
What about the Alien franchise?
that's horror.
Oh, we're going to go more horror, though. Okay.
Yes.
All right. fair
Yeah,
enough.
no, the first one is horror. The second one is action. The third one's shit. Prometheus, that is a space movie. That's a very big idea, lots of hard concepts to wrap your mind around kind of space movie. Did not do well.
You know, space movies are some of the movies to be able to see in the theater almost is always going to be the best way. I take a movie like Gravity. Like you watch that movie in the theater.
That was an event. That was more like a theme park ride than a movie.
Well, and I agree with that. But I mean, as far as going to watch it in the theater, that's going to be 1,000 times better than watching it at home.
Of course, I saw that at home.
Heart was pounding.
I saw it at home, and I'm like, I should have seen this in the theater.
Yeah.
Like this, because it can't keep my attention at home.
No, it really could.
But in 3D, 60 feet, of course, I'm going to be like, oh my god, what's going to happen?
Unbelievably ridiculous. Does Avatar count?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Visually, obviously, Avatar was spectacular. Everything else about it. It was spectacular in a sense that it changed. 3D obviously has been there forever, right?
Yeah.
So, but the way that the depth of field they did with Avatar, because they could afford to put 20 people in a row in a, just in a conference room to make it visually pop where other people couldn't.
What I think separated Avatar from other movies is just the amount of money they threw at it. Because, I mean, it created some new technology for sure, right? But it didn't really bring 3D as like a common thing in theaters anymore.
Agreed. It didn't take it to the next step.
3D you really only get now on animated movies. It's not like the thing. And it flopped at home, so.
Well, they made $80 billion in the theater, so I think that's okay.
No, I'm talking about 3D.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
As a technology.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how the sequels do. They're going to do great overseas because foreign markets love it.
And they're not a movie that you have to really understand English to watch it.
That's
it's a visual
the big
thing.
part of it, yeah. But he hasn't made a movie in 25 years that has $1 billion.
Right.
He's only made 2 movies in 25 years.
Now, I watched a movie recently.
3, sorry.
Last year. It was came out last year at Christmas time, and it was the movie with dadgummit. I almost called it Gravity. No, it wasn't Life. Oh, we can talk about Life as
I
well.
haven't seen it.
It was decent. It wasn't great. It was all right.
It's Alien.
A Passenger with Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Now, that is the biggest one location movie that I think that I've ever seen. That's for sure. Because when you build a spacecraft that's humongo jongo and you've got everything on the spacecraft, you can make it
if
one
we're going to
location.
talk about one location space movies where characters have questionable morals, can't we just talk about Moon?
We can, indeed. Indeed. That
great.
was I think it's an underrated movie. I've only seen it once.
I think in the nerd community, it gets a little more respect than it deserves for one reason. I think they could have done more with the philosophy behind the whole cloning thing. But the movie wasn't about that, so I can't knock it for that.
Right.
But the movie was very straightforward, almost disturbingly so, where it's like, oh, they're going to talk about the moral ramp. No. This is the plot.
How about a classic from, I believe, the late 90s, Mars Attacks?
I think that was 94.
I believe
95.
it was right around there.
Oh, no, it was 96 because it came out right like a month after Independence Day and failed.
Those may be my favorite aliens.
Mars Attacks is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
It's so random.
Jack Nicholson he's a treasure
Yes,
in that movie.
Indeed.
And everything that Pierce Brosnan does is hilarious.
Right.
Yeah, I love Mars Attacks.
Have we changed outer space movies in the last 5 or 10 years? I use, for example, the Matt Damon one. That was an outer space movie that really was about him and,
Elysium?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call that outer space because, it's a colony. It doesn't mostly take place not on Earth. It's just like the last 15 minutes.
But I think that there's a rhythm and there's a beat and there's an energy to that film that I feel like that the studios go, oh, okay, well, this worked and this was successful, so we're going to try to replicate those parts of it about an outer space movie. Whereas it's not HAL. There was no HAL for 2001
Right.
in that. That was the ominous thing. And it was more of a positive, I guess, spin on that kind of stuff. So is that something that we're going to see more of?
I don't think so. If anything, I think you're going to see almost more Cronenberg-esque kind of space movies about technology and body horror as we get closer to the singularity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't seen more just straight up evil robot movies because they are literally threatening to destroy our economy right now.
Sure.
So it needs to be something that we should be reactive to, but we're not, which is odd to me.
It seems that we don't respond in movies that way anymore, whether it be political or whether it be
No.
that kind of stuff. We just don't. We don't. Somebody was talking the other day about the Parallax View and all the 3 Days of the Condor and those
Yeah.
kind of movies from the 70s, where we could make those so easily now,
There's
but
one,
we don't respond that way.
Well, there's one word: why. Conglomerates. In the 70s and early 80s, you still had like individuals running studios,
Right.
And now that a studio has to serve, their evil alien overlords, they have to serve the people that pay them. They have other interests in mind, so they can't make something reactionary because they don't want a message. They want to satiate.
Right. Sure. Do you
Yeah.
have a favorite alien from a movie?
Oh, that's so tough.
I mean, like I said, Mars Attacks, that may be my favorite, at least off the top of my head. I really like those stupid things.
I really like the spindly white alien that first comes out of the ship in Close Encounters.
Oh, okay.
That thing is creepy.
Yes, it is, indeed.
Now, there are a lot of great movie aliens.
We
That
didn't
one
even
kinda
talk
bothers
about
me.
the Amy Adams movie that came out last year. That was on Earth, so it may be
Arrival.
Yeah, but the aliens in that were very unique, very visually representative of something
They're
new
not
that
just
we
a
had
guy
seen.
with like bumps on his head.
Right.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
not like the stupid green screen or the green-bodied suit that stupid, terrible director used in that stupid, terrible movie, M. Night Shyamalan, in that stupid alien movie that he made. They weren't that. Don't get me started.
that movie.
Don't get me
There
started.
are a million things wrong with that movie. A million.
Let's not leave on a negative note. Let's leave on a positive note.
What's your favorite space movie?
I mean, even still, I think it's 2001. There's so many fun things about that
Yeah.
movie. It's not the most exciting movie, certainly, but visually, it just represents so many wonderful and different things that that I can watch it fairly regularly.
I might have to go with that one for one reason. I was in class at USC,
Mm-hmm.
name drop, and we were supposed to watch Godard, and our professor said, "I don't feel like showing Godard. I don't like Godard." So I got a movie for you. It's History of International Cinema. It's like it's not a European film, but it has European sensibilities, and most of it was shot there. So we're gonna watch it. It's long. It's in 70 millimeter. We got a brand new print. Go to the bathroom now because we're not gonna have time for a lecture.
Mm.
I'm like, wait. Shot in an American film, shot overseas in 70 millimeter.
Gotta be.
Everyone went to the bathroom. I'm like, I'm gonna hold it. Front row center. We had a 60-foot screen, brand new print, and I understood the movie perfectly for the first time, especially visually. He shoots like the whole thing with 14, 18 mil lens, these really wide lenses,
Mm-hmm.
until it cuts to the close-up Bowen's eye when he's going through.
Oh, right.
So you go from seeing like everything head to toe, like as you would see life, right? And even a close-up, he's using wide lenses. And then he cuts to a close-up where 60 feet, 70 millimeter, is something that's an inch and a half wide. And at that moment in the movie, my heart stopped and I thought I could see through time. It was the most transcendent experience I've ever had. So yeah, 2001. If you don't like it, you're wrong.
We didn't talk about any European outer space movies. Have they made any?
Solaris. That's the one everyone talks
Okay,
about.
so that's
Solaris.
probably a good reason that we didn't talk about
If
European.
Yardowski could have made his Dune,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been amazing. But here's the thing, as great as that movie could have been, I don't think people would have seen it, and it would have robbed us of a million other great sci-fi movies since then.
They all stole from that book.
Fifth Element, and probably Valerian when that comes out, all by Luc Besson.
Right.
Valerian looks
They are
awesome.
uniquely Luc Besson
Yeah.
films.
Hi, I'm French. Give me $300 million.
There's there's been a hullabaloo this week, as there always is.
What is a hullabaloo?
A hullabaloo is a situation as to which people need to talk about. So we should
I thought
talk
it was
about
a giant bear from the Jungle Book.
that's the Build-A-Bear, but you were close. The X-Files will return. The TV show will return for an 11th season next year, and it's going to be written exclusively by men, like Menon, only a TV show.
Stanza.
Why is that? Why is that wrong? Is that wrong? Has that not how it's always been?
Well, there's one
Talk to me.
person involved with this who has been very vocal about being upset after
Mhm.
finding out about this.
Mm-hmm.
That's Gillian Anderson.
She is a person on the show.
And she has every right to be upset because it's kind of weird in this day and age that all of the directors and writers on a show
Right.
would be men. But here's the thing.
Tell me.
They need to bring in women, robots, whatever, aliens, monsters, cryptids, I don't care,
Mhm.
as long as this season is better than last season, because last season sucked.
It is weird that they're doing another season because while I
Last
enjoyed
season
last
was-
season, it was not good.
Got a question.
It was not good.
How many episodes do you remember from last season? There are only 10.
I remember the episode where the guy turned from a thing to a dude, and they were searching for him.
The funny, weird one that really isn't that good.
But
Okay.
I remember that episode.
Right.
I'm out after that. I'm out. I got nothing else.
Okay. And then you have the first episode and the last episode, which are the only ones that felt like actual X-Files episodes,
Right.
with probably the biggest cliffhanger they could have left on. And that last episode could have been an entire season's worth of stuff.
It did seem a little
It was
off
rushed.
kilter. Now,
So, spoiler alert, but all of a sudden,
Oh,
the last 20 minutes, you're like, oh, everybody's literally dying in the streets, and now we're getting kidnapped by a UFO, cut to black.
I can't wait till that happens.
It's so dumb. It was further out of left field than that UFO in the big
I know,
fight in
right.
season 2 of Fargo.
That's classic Fargo.
Are you seeing that?
Now,
Yeah, it's a UFO. Let's go.
Some of the argument from people are saying, well, these are all first-time writers. So them
That's
being
even
male.
worse. Why get them the keys to the kingdom of, one of the greatest sci-fi properties of all time? Get some talented female writers in there. Are you
Now-
saying that females can't write sci-fi? Is that what you're saying, Matt?
Oh, I'm going to talk negatively about women a lot today, so we might as well start now.
I'm
now,
sorry, Aaron.
if there were quality women there,
Matt
and
speaks for himself.
and whoever makes X-Files would not have overlooked them, would they have been on the show? Would they have written for the show?
Do you think it might just be Chris Carter like going crazy with nepotism, where it's like, hey, well, this guy's friend needs a job, and hey, I know this guy's nephew, and
At least several of the people have worked on X-Files before, not as writers, just as worked in other departments on the show.
so we're their old writers.
But they didn't want any part of it after last season. That definitely could
Like,
be it.
everything about this is just kind of confusing. First of all, that someone kind of figured out, like, hey, there are no women on the show besides Dana,
Right.
right? And why in this climate, especially, with the Oscars so white and just everything going on in this country for the last 3 years, why they would let that happen? I mean, used to you would have, that's the whole like the token,
Mhm.
right?
Sure.
So, and that's been so ingrained in our vocabulary, our social vocabulary, that you kind of think that, that idea has been around for a while. You're going to hire someone who's outside of the norm of the other people here,
Mhm.
just so we can say, hey, we're being inclusive, even though you're really not. So, again, why didn't they at least hire one woman just for that, just to save their own butts on this? It
So
makes
you're
no
saying,
sense.
not unlike handicapped people, we should bring women in just as tokens. That was
No,
Matt saying
That is not what
to
I'm
be
saying
clear.
at all. What I'm saying is that's how hiring practices have been in the past, to keep themselves from being accused of anything. So why would they actively keep females out of the writer room and out of the director's chair? It makes no sense. There are a lot of great female directors out there, especially in TV. Some of the best episodes of Breaking Bad were directed by women. So why not get some of them? You're going to be shooting out in Albuquerque anyway. Nothing makes any sense anymore, Matt.
Trump America, that is certain.
Is that what it is? It's Chris Carter just like secretly a diehard
he's
Trump
like,
supporter?
sweet, I can finally kick women out of this show, so they can just be a
Is he
male
like a Ron Silver?
ensemble cast.
Is he like Ron Silver, where he's like one of the 3 super conservative people in Hollywood?
Wouldn't be well. I'm wearing one today.
Is he?
Let's acknowledge what I'm wearing
Matt
today.
is wearing a Vincent Gallo shirt because Matt hates me.
My classic Vincent Gallo shirt that may or may not have armpit stains, but it doesn't matter. 'cause I
Meanwhile,
keep
I'm
wearing it.
classy and I keep my Vincent Gallo wear to under the clothes.
You know, they had a whole thing about. Anyways, we'll talk about Chloe Sevigny some other time. So X-Files not
Lord.
having women, weird.
Very wrong.
Not 2017.
And not as progressive as the show was for women.
Absolutely,
Yeah. That's weird.
it is strange. So thanks X-Files for being weird.
Hey, Matt,
Yes, man.
got a question for you.
Hit me up.
What's better than movies?
What's better than movies? Sex?
Oh, yeah, that too. I was going to say music.
Oh,
And you know what's even better than music?
sex?
That too.
Okay.
Music in movies.
Oh, I like where we're going with this.
So my question for you is,
Yes.
what are some of the greatest movie soundtracks? Not scores, not
Mhm.
musical scores. So
Mhm.
can't talk about John Williams.
Okay.
Some of the best soundtracks of all time.
I love that we're doing this week because Baby Driver comes out this week.
Yes.
And I've seen it, you haven't, but I will say that it is very musically driven.
Well, the whole movie's choreographed to it. Yeah.
It is choreographed, not unlike some of the scenes in Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that those 2 films are 2 of the most recent films that use soundtracks in a way that nobody else does. Now, certainly that can be because soundtracks are expensive. To be
They
able
are
to
now.
buy
They are
spend that money, you're not putting that somewhere else in the film, and budgets are so tight nowadays that it's very
Yeah.
difficult to get music. So to go out of your way to spend the money on music is thank you for filmmakers that do that.
It's something that I think we're missing because, especially movies from the 90s,
Mhm.
it seemed like every other movie had a monster soundtrack that came with it.
Can't Hardly Wait, for example, monster soundtrack.
No,
Go
Go
had
had
a classic
huge soundtrack.
yes.
Even something that's as, I don't want to say clickbaity, but as nostalgia-inducing for our parents as Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump's a great soundtrack.
Yep.
Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights might be my favorite soundtrack of all time, but then again, you also have everything that Tarantino's ever done.
Yes.
Everything.
I believe I own all those soundtracks.
And then another two of the other best ones from the 90s, Casino and Goodfellas. Those are 2 of the best.
Scorsese can't direct very well, but he can pick out music for a movie.
So I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but Matt won't be on the podcast anymore because he's just had a stroke because he's talking foolishness.
Maybe I clickbaited everybody. No, I'm just saying. I watched the Gangs of New York the other day. The first opening scene was terrible. I'm saying sometimes he makes a good film, but sometimes he doesn't.
Well, that
But
movie,
he always puts
the
good music
opening
in the films.
scene in that movie was also cut down thanks to the MPAA.
It could have been cut down, cut up, cut left, or cut right, and it still would have been garbage. It was like a 12-year-old did it for ABC. Ooh, what's happening now,
I'm not
Scorsese?
going to fight you on Gangs of New York.
Mm.
But if we're going to talk about soundtracks, we
Yes.
also need to talk about the movie that kind of gave us the idea of, hey, we're going to use pre-recorded music and people aren't going to be singing.
Singles.
Yeah. It's a movie that came out in 1973,
A little before Singles.
and they had to pitch this to people as it's a musical where nobody sings because the idea was so radical at the time that people couldn't process it. And they also did something a little interesting in this movie where most of the music is heard through car radios in the scenes. So they actually played these songs back through car radios for the movie. And that, of course, is American Graffiti. I can't
What's
think.
that again?
That, of course, is American Graffiti.
Oh, yes.
The one movie where it's like, George Lucas can really direct.
Indeed. And the music that he was able to pick out at the time. First of all, I can't imagine how cheap that must have come.
It
So
costs,
jealous
It
of
costs nothing. The whole credit for music supervisor didn't really exist before that movie, and especially the way he uses it, like at the end, where they're wrapping up everybody's stories, and it's like this person got married and did nothing with their life. This guy moved away, never came back. This guy went missing in Vietnam, and this guy, well, he got hit by a drunk driver on New Year's Eve and died, and you're like, wait, what? And then it just hits you with All Summer Long by the Beach Boys, and like the most upbeat, cheerful song, and it's
Mhm.
like, no, I shouldn't be feeling these two things at the same time.
Right. And that's the beauty of music and cinema, and the way that you can evoke such emotion that you can still feel years after you watch the film, whether
Yeah.
it be the Mad, Mad, Mad World song that they do in Donnie Darko.
Mhm.
I mean, that to me is such a quintessential emotional moment of the film, and
Yeah.
we'll never forget how that plays out. Or even something else that Richard Kelly had done when in the middle of Southland Tales, out of nowhere,
Oh yeah.
the Killers kicks in,
Man.
and then you have
the
this
best scene in
Justin
the movie.
Timberlake, performance to the Killers, and it was just. I remember the moment in the theater when that happened. Like I kind of squealed like
Yeah.
a little girl because I was so excited.
And this is something that you've actually mentioned before with me. There are songs that you now, when they're used properly in a movie, you can't separate them, no matter if you've heard them before the movie or not. And Reservoir Dogs, Stuck in the Middle with You. I don't know about you, but
Mm. I've never.
that's what I see in my head every single time.
I don't dance anywhere, but if I'm gonna dance, that's my
Right.
dance.
Right. And of course, there are songs that, again, more Tarantino, that I never would have heard about, and bands I never would have heard about if they hadn't been in some of these movies, like Death Proof
Right. Sure.
and Hold Tight. Like that song just blew my mind.
Him and Scorsese are a master at beginning films with music, getting the tempo and getting the energy. Where it's Jackie Brown across 110th Street, or
Yeah.
it's in Scorsese's film with DiCaprio and Wahlberg. That one, they start with the Rolling Stones song, and
Yeah.
that's just so amazing. The movement and the
He
energy they
uses
use it.
The Stones a lot. No, there's shoot.
But that's okay because I've got many things to talk about.
Yeah, keep going.
And I want to go back to Guardians of the Galaxy a little bit because
Yeah.
I think that may begin to bring it back to understand that you can spend a little bit extra money on the music because it works, and there are things that you can attach with music, pop songs or any kind of different songs.
The sales
stay
for
with you.
Brandy have skyrocketed since the second movie came out.
How crazy is that? I mean, the way that it affects things in that way.
That was a song that every time I heard, I never really cared for it. Just kind of came on, didn't pay attention.
Sure.
But now I remember how it's used in the movie. I dig it now, because I'm not just listening to the song. I'm remembering something else I like. It's nostalgia.
Right. It takes on a different context.
Right. So now a song that I didn't pay attention to before just opens up the dopamine drip in the back of my head.
Right. I enjoy a lot of soundtracks with rappers in movies because they're able to utilize so much of the different rap because this guy's attached to it, whether it be DMX in a film or whether it be Tupac in a film.
Or Mom's Spaghetti.
Sure, that as well. And they were able to bring in songs and mixes that you're not going to get anywhere else because these guys will go in the studio and they record something uniquely special for the film, and then you have this thing. I believe Boys in the Hood, certainly was one of the early ones that had that kind of stuff. Or Poetic Justice because Tupac was in the movie. The Bodyguard was another. No, just kidding. But that did have an excellent soundtrack as well.
The song, yeah, of course. But and if we're going to talk about rap, Coolio.
Gangster's Paradise.
It's a great song, but do you think it would have been as remembered if that movie wasn't also huge at the time? Or do you think that song was so good it elevated that movie?
I definitely
I think it's
think
a little
so.
bit of the latter.
Yeah, because nobody remembers that movie except
No.
for the song.
Yeah.
And that's unbelievable to me that the crazy guy with the hair writes a song for that movie that just sticks with it forever. And that's
It's also just one of the greatest rap songs of all time. Like, it's fantastic.
well, I mean, it's something. It's something. We can talk about that on our rap podcast. Check that out on iTunes. It's called
When you take a look at the history of hip hop,
Mhm.
smack dab, like, was it 1995, 96?
right.
That's going to be looming large. It is.
It is.
is.
I hear you, but when you look at the spectrum of rap music, it doesn't. It's not a dot on the spectrum.
I think it's kind of like talking about Stairway to Heaven. Stairway to Heaven isn't the best song they even did,
Mhm.
and it's derivative, and it's still a good song, not the greatest song, but you can't talk about 70s rock without mentioning it, and it looms large just because of where it sits in the public's heart.
Right.
Same thing with Korea.
And music can also in the trailer, to be able to use that in the trailer, really kind of attaches itself to movies, and it definitely got me into the theater because of that.
Blow. The teaser trailer for
one.
Blow with Get Connected.
Mm-hmm.
My Lord. I saw that. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Because it starts with Get Connected and then it goes into Black Betty.
Right.
By Ram Jam, right?
Ram Jam.
Yeah. And then as the trailer's going, it's like the music got me. And then all of a sudden it's like, starring Ray Liotta. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Johnny Depp. All right. Paul Rubens. I'm there.
What? I can't feel my face.
Yeah. Bobcat Goldthwait out of nowhere.
Such an excellent performance by Bobcat. So soundtracks, have been a staple for that's 40 years. Is that 40 years? Almost 40 years now.
More.
And it's amazing to be able to go
40
into
years.
even the vinyl store now and look at some of the soundtracks and some of the music that we've been given because of movies and they put together in movies. Is there any music from a band, say for example, that you didn't know before that you latched onto because of a movie and they're still with you? And if you say Marcy's Playground, I will leave this room.
God, no. Yeah, Davy D, Dozy Beaky, Mick and Titch, Hold Tight from Death Proof.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, because I went and took a look at like most of what they did after,
Mhm.
like after I saw the movie, and I'm like, my Lord, this is the greatest band nobody's heard of,
Right.
and they're fantastic.
Okay.
What about you?
I have one. I'm going to tell you that one, and then I got a question for you. Mine would be also a Tarantino film from Kill Bill, the band that's in the Crazy 88's place.
5, 6, 7, 8.
So good. I love those. That's just so good. Unbelievable. Okay, so the question that's most important when it comes to soundtracks: Love Bites or Reality Bites or singles? That's the question.
Reality Bites.
Why? Was that the one where the musicians were in it or weren't in it? I can't remember either.
It's just because if I'm gonna go with anything, it's gonna be that because I hear more people talk about that than singles.
All right, fair enough. Kiddies, if you don't know what those movies are, you probably shouldn't go watch them because you're not going to enjoy
Well, that's
it at all.
another
But
thing. I think more people know about Reality Bites.
that's true too.
Yeah.
Which one was Cameron Crowe?
Wait.
No.
Probably both.
We'll leave that for a mystery.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, Matt.
Got a question for you.
Hit me.
Do you know who Paul Thomas Anderson is?
I know who Paul Anderson is.
Paul W.S. Anderson?
He is terrible.
No, he's made a couple of good movies.
Let's talk about the genius that's Paul Thomas
Paul
Anderson.
Thomas Anderson. Have you heard the news?
What news would that be, sir?
His latest film, this mystery movie he's shooting, the one with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis is the last film, I believe.
His last film, which means it's got to be great.
Right.
He doesn't have a director of photography. He is acting as his own director of photography. He's basically pulling a Kubrick.
That's pretty ballsy.
Yeah. So I got a question.
Yes.
When does a filmmaker, the auteur,
Mhm.
right, can they do too much of their own stuff?
Let's start backwards and go from there.
Okay.
In the credits of The Brown Bunny, written, directed, starred, and shot by Mr. Vincent C. Gallo.
Right.
Of all the nice, wonderful things that I've always said about The Brown Bunny, I think maybe he bit off a little bit more than he can chew.
Yeah.
To be able to take on everything in the process and editing is just probably too much for one person as far as a feature film goes. If you want to do it in a short film, fine.
Yeah.
All the things that go into making a feature film are probably too much for one person.
Personally, I don't see how someone can shoot their movie and not edit it. But maybe that's just because I've been editing for so long.
Sure.
But also acting in it, I don't know how someone can make a feature film as a director and star in it.
Mhm.
Because to me, to give a really good performance, you would have to, especially as the lead, you've got to put a lot of your energy into that.
The concentration that it has to take to be
Right.
able to be that. And then if you're then if you're doing that concentration, plus you're trying to deal with actors who, obviously in this specific circumstance, we're not professional actors, and then you're trying to shoot the camera, and then you've got the remote control for the camera because you're very obsessed with how everything looks, so you have to run the remote control for the camera, so you got the monitor there, and you're trying to do all that stuff. That's just it inevitably is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about some filmmakers who
Mhm.
famously,
Mhm.
maybe some people
Or
don't know,
infamously.
right? Some people might not know about this. Do more than just write and direct.
Mm-hmm.
Like Steven Soderbergh, he's basically been the DP on all of his movies.
Right.
I think since Traffic, right? But then again, he also doesn't shoot the traditional Hollywood movies usually, right? Do you think he would be a better director if he worried just about that and not, shooting as well?
It's such a tough thing because when you get to a certain point, he's shot so many movies
Mhm.
by now. The Coen Brothers, another example that I think
They
that
edit.
could shoot their own stuff. They don't. They have a DP. I don't remember what his name is. I mean, because he's the best.
Deacons.
But I really think that they could. They've been through the process enough that they could be able to shoot their own thing. But you have
But
to.
they also edit.
They also
They-
edit, right?
They use a pseudonym, but they edit their own movies,
Right. And so
which is enough.
number one, it takes experience. Like
Yeah.
Donnie Darko, Richard Kelly could not have come in there and shot
No.
that himself. And it's not his fault. It's not anybody's fault. But to be able to do a movie like that, unless you're doing a $3,000 movie, like Desperado or whatever. What was one? El Mariachi, excuse me.
Okay, we're gonna come back to him in a minute.
All right, excellent, excellent. But it takes experience, and it takes to be able to do it over and over and over again. So somebody like Kubrick, who had done that, besides the fact that he was just a super genius,
And he got his start as a photographer.
he had a visual eye for that, and he knew camera lenses, and he
Right.
knew focal length, and he knew all the other stuff that you have to know because people
He knew more
think-
than anybody.
think that you just put the lens on and point the camera, and that gets it. And a lot of people do think that
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, but a lot of people do think that.
shoot that.
It's absurd, and you don't understand the colors and where you're a filmmaker like Deadgummit, what's his name? He's from Dallas, and he does all the weird, quirky movies. I mean, the Royal Tenenbaums. What's his name?
Oh, Wes Anderson.
Yeah, I mean,
He has one lens and it's a 30 mil.
he has one lens, but it's where you put the characters, and he always blocks everything in halves. And so when you're shooting
Yeah.
that, if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna mess that up, and it's
Right.
not gonna be right. It's not gonna look right.
So you're saying that someone like Soderbergh, apparently at this point, has worked as his own DP so much that he probably knows more than most of the people he would hire.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's go back to El Mariachi.
Yes.
Alex, what was it? Rodriguez,
Yes.
right? Not Alex.
Alex Rodriguez,
Yeah,
close.
right? Robert Rodriguez.
Yes.
He famously puts, shot and chopped by.
Mm-hmm.
He writes, directs, shoots, edits his own movies, and he has his own production company where he does all the
Mm-hmm.
Is this a situation where he might not be comfortable because he started making movies so cheaply he might not be comfortable with a big crew? Or is it one of these like jack of all trades, master of none, where he's doing these things and he really should hire someone else to do them for him?
I really think that a lot of that comes from he makes B movies.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with that, but it's an easier thing to do
Right.
than if he was going to go out and make a Academy Award winning, big budget or something like that kind of film. You can do that a little bit more on B movies because of the allotment of things that you can do that you couldn't do in an A-level movie.
Right.
So I think that that's definitely one. But also, yeah, I mean, when you've been shooting for so long, ego gets in the way. That's for sure. I mean, I'm sure that he knows DPs that are the best of the best because he
Yeah.
hangs out with Tarantino. He knows all these people. But if he goes, yeah, I could let them shoot this, but what if I don't like what they do? If I do it, the only person to blame is myself.
Also, it probably slows him down.
Sure.
And he shoots.
Yeah.
fast.
And it's the dance. It's the relationship. Anytime you have two people doing something, you have to make sure that you work as a unit. And if you can't work as a unit, if you're fighting the whole time, then you're not going to get the shots that you want, and everything's going to be
Yeah.
delayed, and then you're just going to be mad at the end of the day because it's not what you were hoping to do. I mean, there's definitely been directors that have hired DPs that have come on and shot it completely different than what they thought, and then becomes just a disaster in the end because there's just fighting. It just becomes a giant fight to do anything.
Spielberg went through 4 DPs on Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Unbelievable.
4. One of them was my professor.
Unbelievable. But he got what he wanted in the end, and he
Yeah.
fought for that. And he had the cachet, obviously, at that point to be able to fight for that.
Funny thing is, it was only his 3rd movie.
But even still, at that
Yeah.
point, they believed him and him
fourth
enough
if you count Duel.
that they'd be able to, allow
He made
that.
Jaws. Like, he
that
just
latitude.
made Jaws. He
Yes.
could do anything he wanted.
Exactly. And, sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. And it's, for the most part, it's certainly case-by-case basis, but
I actually I had a project I was working on where I was writing a script with somebody,
Mhm.
and I was going to direct and edit as well, right? And we brought on a producer to help kind of just line produce. And there was a big pushback with him and his friend, who happened to be an editor.
of course.
Right. Where they tried to usurp me as editor on the project because, quote, that would be doing too much.
Oh, of course.
Right. Yeah. Because you want to let the guy who's never cut a feature film, and the guy who's cut 5 not.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the, wanting to do everything yourself just because it's quicker. I can cut faster than most people I've ever met. Like, it's just, it's a gift I have. I cut very fast, and it's generally pretty good. And I've tried that before. I've had other people edit my stuff, and it's gotten to the point to where I know I just should not go down that road. Because last time I let that happen, it was for a short film. It was one of the 24-hour movies, and this guy sat there, took 3 hours, didn't make anything watchable. It only finished a minute. And I said, dude, I need you to move out of the way. And in 40 minutes, we had the entire thing cut. Because when I shoot for the edit. I've been doing this a long time.
Right.
I'm not saying that I'm great, but it's,
You have a purpose
right.
when you're doing it.
Right. So it's quicker and easier for me to do it than try to explain it to somebody else. Because then I get in my own head and I, get a little.
Is it easier, harder, or the same when you do film versus digital? Could PTA next time shoot on 35 and do it all himself?
Well, that he is. Well, actually, I think he's shooting on 65 mil.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, there you go.
no, because he doesn't use digital. Like, he is very anti.
I thought maybe that this was the time since he was going to do that. He switched
Nope.
over. I mean, that the balls to be able to do that.
That's ballsy, because especially when you're dealing with equipment that really isn't made anymore.
Right, exactly.
And film is finite in terms of, like, you can't just, like, erase it and start over. Like, that stuff costs money, especially when you're shooting large format like that. But he obviously feels comfortable, and I got a feeling that he's the kind of filmmaker who has typically been, he has a DP, but he's like, no, let's put a 75 mil lens on, let's do this. Especially if you watch, like, behind the scenes stuff, he is that way. Like, there's a shot in Magnolia where he set up, it's an insert of keys dropping on a table, and he set it up, and he's just over and over throwing the keys himself on the table, even though he's not in the movie, just to get them to land the right way. And then later on, behind the scenes of Magnolia, there's a part where they're talking about they're doing a junket for the movie, and everybody's in there, and they're like, "Oh, have you seen the latest trailer?" And Paul goes, "Yeah, I cut that one myself." And then William H. Macy kind of walks away and looks at the camera and jokingly says, "Yeah, he did the poster himself too, and the lenses, he ground those himself too, because even at that point he was 29.
Mm-hmm.
He had Final Cut on his movie, and he's cutting his own trailers, and he cut several of them. This doesn't surprise me at all.
There's a difference between passion and just wanting to be a jerk and not wanting anybody else in the process. And I think that his is a passion that he loves cinema, and he loves making films, and loves all that stuff so much.
And I think he's worked with the same guy for so long that maybe it was just one of those things that the schedule wasn't right, and he's like, you know what, I can do this. He probably had a talk with the guy.
Mm.
I wouldn't be surprised if the DP that he worked with didn't say to him, "Hey, man, you can do this. If you need me, that's why we have cell phones and text messaging."
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things that this doesn't surprise me. I'm very interested to see what happens, because he could fall flat on his face, because he's been kind of experimenting lately.
Yeah, it really has.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's great that we're getting a new PTA movie. So that all that matters, and let's see what he's got going.
He's only had one kind of misfire for me, and it's not a bad movie. It's just not my thing.
Which is?
Inherent Vice. Like
Get out of
I
here.
can't get into it.
Get out of
But
here.
he hasn't made a bad movie. Like I don't think he can make them.
Right.
And most of them are some of the best ever made.
Excellent. Do you consider us critics?
Man, that's a tough one. Kind of. I mean, that's what my major was was
Right.
film criticism.
Critics, movie critics over the years have taken on different forms,
Oh yeah. They used
different
to be
ways to get it.
scholarly, learned men who studied
And women,
this.
and women,
and women, and now they are jackasses on YouTube.
like you and me.
Yeah, well, we're not on YouTube yet.
We could be. Yes, I love
Comment below if you want to see us on YouTube.
movie critics used to be, and I think still can be, a quintessential part of the movie-going experience. Because for somebody like a Pauline Kael, I want to talk about her a little bit. That's
Okay.
Tarantino's favorite.
Mhm.
That's a lot of the old guys' favorites because it was advanced film school
Yeah.
lessons in cinema.
Mhm.
And her unbelievable knowledge of cinema that goes back to the 20s and the 30s and all the films in cinema that she's seen to be able to talk about. To read some of her reviews of things, it hurts my brain. It's so
Yeah.
smart and so good, and whether it be French New Wave, as we talked about earlier, some of the films that she talked about, or any. Now she would never review a Tarantino movie. He's admitted that himself. Like it was trash in the sense that it wasn't high-minded cinema, and that's where they used to be, and that's. I think because of them, we do still keep some of that cinema because they wrote about it, they talked about it, because it became part of cinematic history because of them. I think a lot of times, and they champion films like that.
Yeah. I was very lucky in school. One of my last classes I took was Film Symposium, and it's still taught by Leonard Maltin. And being able to talk with him, before and after class, and just pick his brain, and then you find out that he has thousands of movies, like short films, on 16 mil and 35 mil, and he brought them into class to show before the feature. And I was in his class when Sky Captain: The World of Tomorrow came out, and I went up to talk to him after I saw it, and I said, "What'd you think of it?" It was all right. He's like, it kind of reminded me of the Fleischer cartoons for Superman. I'm like, yeah, Mechanical Monsters. And it was one of those things where learning from him was incredible because his depth of knowledge of cinema was just seemingly endless. I don't know if I've ever met another human being that knew as much about a subject as he does about movies. And to be able to pick his brain was invaluable. And unfortunately, those critics don't seem to be the one making noises anymore. Now we have people like, Chris Stuckman, who is on YouTube. I don't know what his credentials are. I know he's made a couple of crappy films, that he won't really release.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if he went to school for this or what. And kind of goes into something that Leonard Maltin said in one of the classes. I think it was the first class. He said, a newspaper won't send someone who doesn't know anything about football to cover a football game. They'll send somebody who knows everything about the sport. But they will send literally anybody to review a movie. Because everyone thinks they have an equal opinion.
Right.
And that's just not the case.
Not at all.
Some people have more knowledge about things than others. But for some reason, movies, it's the one subject where it's not even that way with music. People go, that drummer sucks. But if a drummer comes up and says, well, actually, he's better than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of people say that Ringo Starr is a crappy drummer, but it turns out like every good drummer, their favorite drummer is Ringo, right? But yet, if someone who has made movies or spent their life studying movies says, oh, no, Transformers is terrible, we're going to go, well, that's just your opinion. I don't know why it's that case with movies, but it's infuriating. And I think the democratization of technology to where anyone can broadcast their opinion is a good thing. It's a very good thing, but it's also a bad thing because now everybody can broadcast their opinion.
Right.
And if you search for Transformers movie review on YouTube, you're going to find 9 million people that are all saying the exact same thing. They all look the same, except for one little group of people. Red Letter Media. These guys who kind of invented long-form film criticism on the internet are now in the process of deconstructing it. They have I don't know if you ever watched them. You know, they do
No.
Half in the Bag. They have a bunch of series on their channel. They're incredibly funny. Very bright men and do some of the best film criticism I've ever heard. And they have put up 3 reviews for Transformers. And they are all 20 minutes long and contain a minute and a half of content and then 18 minutes of black screen. And the content is just people drinking, and every time they take a drink, you hear explosions and Transformers sounds. And right now they're deconstructing modern film criticism, the very thing that they helped create. And it's kind of beautiful, and it's kind of brilliant, but they're also the only ones doing it, and everyone else is trying to copy them. And it's a little upsetting.
There's a perspective that people don't have today and don't understand about what perspective can bring to speaking
Correct.
about cinema, to speaking about movies, to be able to go, oh, well, the reason that this happened at this moment is because in 1972 they did this thing, and to be able to give that to people and to correlate things. I always, even though Roger Ebert is dead and he's had some disagreements with Vincent Gallo, I still go to his website when a new movie comes out because they bring in people who know what they're talking about.
Yes.
And they have a curated site that's specifically for those kind of people. And so even if it's not long form, because they don't really do long form on there, but they give you some kind of overview, at least a smart overview of the film. I think that New York Times also does still a really good job of doing
for the most part.
Yes, I mean they still go watch. They still review shitty films that they shouldn't review.
What's his name? Armin White.
Yeah.
That guy is the absolute worst.
Well, Peter Travers is the worst, but he's right up there too. Peter Travers with Rolling
if
Stone.
you take a look at Armin White's reviews, they are literally the opposite of the consensus every single time. He is just the most negative Nelly I've ever seen.
If people could see us in the studio right now, the motion that I'm about to make for every Peter Travers review is a little bit like this.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't dislike anything because he gets paid to like everything. Right. And that's a problem today because he's on the Rolling Stones. People are going to see that. Like that's going to be viewed a lot. And people aren't discerning enough to go somewhere else for a lot of their reviews.
Well, what do you think about studios were saying the reason Baywatch bombed was because people listened to Rotten Tomatoes too much. Like, they're an aggregate. That's all they do.
And you put Rotten Tomatoes on all your movie posters.
Right.
So do not talk out of both sides of your face.
Exactly.
And that's ridiculous. And yes, you've talked about that, and I think that it is important for people to remember, like you talked about, it is an aggregate. And tell the people how it works.
Okay. Basically, the score does not mean how good it is. Let's say you have 5 stars on which to rate a movie, and there are 100 people who have reviewed it, and they all give it 2.5 stars. It's passing, barely. Considered, or heck, let's be generous, 3 stars. Okay? 3 stars. Is that a 100% movie? No, but if all 100 people give it 3 stars, it gets 100%.
It is, yeah.
Likewise, because a movie has 6%, doesn't mean that's how bad it is. It means only 6% of people gave it a passing score, where the other 94% could have given it 2 stars. But to make that make sense, the Rotten Tomatoes score for Back to the Future 2, which is honestly one of the tightest, best scripts I've ever seen and one of the best sequels ever made.
Because it was just Back to the Future 1 in the future.
64%.
Right. Ridiculous. Absurd.
And you look at it and you're like, wait, it's a better movie than that? And you're like, oh, no.
Well, I think that also people push back against popular stuff, and I think that's one of the reasons that it would have a 64%. People go, well, everybody likes it, so it's that's true as well. And so you've had a longer time for stupid people to complain. Absolutely. It is such it's a wild west out there to be able to try to find good reviews of movies, not just reviews, but critical reviews of movies. There are a few YouTube pages that do a really good job and I'd love to give them a shout out, but I don't know any of them right now, that do
Red
a really
Letter
good
Media.
job.
Red Letter Media.
I believe you. Of really break it down. I mean, whether it be Only God Forgives. So they spend 30 minutes explaining the metaphors and explaining everything that goes on. So whether you like the movie or not, you can at least understand where he's coming from, where Nicholas Refn is coming from. So you can be the judge and not just going, oh, I don't like that because of whatever reason.
Right.
There's a real definite reason why you may not like that or you do like that. And I think that that's so valuable on YouTube now to be able to see those kind of things.
I'm sorry, I can't get that story that you told a few episodes back out of my head about those two old women who went to go see Only God
Oh,
Forgives.
yes.
uh,
Another reason why you should always go see movies in the theater.
Right. Okay, so here's a question. Since most of the people are getting their movie reviews from YouTube, I'm assuming.
I gotta think so, yeah.
Right. Do you think they should be required to kind of maybe on each video in the information below, maybe put their credentials?
List their credentials. I wouldn't be against that at all.
Yeah, instead, because it's like, is this just some guy who likes superhero movies? Like, what's going on? Like, is this a corporate shill?
That's the difference. Is because you don't have to have these great credentials and go to USC like some people, but you do have to not be a corporate shill, and you do have to
Right.
be your own thing. And you know, if you're sponsored by Sony, then you're probably not going to say mean things about Sony movies.
Well, think about this. Back when, it was difficult to get your stuff seen, to get it published, to get it on TV, you really had to have credentials behind you
Mm-hmm.
in order to get that out. And while it's true not everyone can go to like NYU or something, do you think we should still expect the people criticizing these things maybe to have a little bit of that background? Because right now, literally anybody can put their stuff up. And for some reason, one person can hit and become popular while someone else
Mhm.
doesn't.
And it could be something as simple as their face or their voice.
Right. So, and even though 20 years ago, they would not have, had the credentials to get on the air.
In a newspaper, yep.
Right. So how do we kind of balance this out? Because everyone should have their voice heard, yes, but you should also know who you should listen to more, as opposed to just going off of, well, I like his red background better than the other guy's red background.
I would like a curated page from filmmakers, a Tarantino curated page or a Scorsese curated page, where they specifically approve people that do, that they go through the process of going, okay, this person has something that they can give back as far as reviews and that kind of stuff, so we put them on our page.
That's a good idea.
So that's what I'm saying. So call Tarantino, tell that mofo,
Or let's just do it ourselves.
get on that.
By the time this comes out, that'll be the new site. That'll be Mattmen Pod will now become an aggregate.
I wish we could be an aggregate. Pinterest is the biggest freaking aggregate, and they're like 30. You're not getting me
I
started
hate
on that.
Pinterest.
Don't get me started. Anyways, movie critics, read some people, read some old stuff.
I give
mean, my
this segment
goodness.
2 thumbs up. Hey, Matt.
Overrated.
I thought I was gonna start this. one.
No, because I know your choices for this overrated thing, and
might
we're
not.
gonna fight about this.
You might not.
We're gonna throw down
About what?
overrated movies.
Okay. Again, before we start,
Yes.
just so I can get my head straight,
Do it.
what is our metric on this?
My
favorite thing to
my
say.
personal feelings about it. That is what our metric is.
Well, okay. Well, then, shouldn't we go with like if everyone agrees it's on the AFI's top 100? And it's like this is the greatest movie of all time. That's considered overrated, and not what you personally think is.
No, we're going to go with what I personally think because I don't care about the AFI. First of all, first overrated thing, the AFI 100 list. Boom, there you go.
I would put the IMDb's top 250 much higher.
Give me BFI's 1000 list. That's the true list.
No, that they're all slanted to the country of origin, completely slanted.
Well, let's not slant towards America then. Let's slant towards Europe. How about that?
No.
How awful is that?
Terrible, because a lot of their movies are really bad, just as bad as ours.
Well, sure, that's true.
I'll put it this way: if it wasn't for foreign markets, we wouldn't have Transformers 5.
Sure, we would not have that, but we
It
also
only
would
made
not
$40
have.
million here in the U.S., but 196 in China. So we're getting a sixth.
That's true, but we also wouldn't have the Brown Bunny if it weren't for international people.
Again,
'cause they
My
give money.
point. One of the few times I've made Matt laugh.
The the overrated nature of things sometimes can be in all kinds of different perspectives, all kinds of different ways, whether it be the feeling of the zeitgeist of a
Okay.
time.
Let's just jump in.
So I think that one of the things that I've always found was the 80s being taken over by John Hughes movies, which are overrated.
Why?
John Hughes movies are this
Because first of all,
fake
you've
time
talked
capsule.
to me
yes,
about this several times.
I have.
and I still don't understand.
I won't let it go. I don't support John Hughes movies. I've never enjoyed them. I don't think that they're funny. I don't think anybody in the Brat Pack, quote unquote, Brat Pack, is really that talented. If we're being honest, how many Academy Award winners came out of that?
You want to talk about overrated? The Academy Awards, overrated. Boom.
I do like other awards festivals better, but that's okay.
I only go by the Berlin.
John Hughes has this. Well, you know what? I'll just backtrack.
Are you
Let's
talking
go.
about him as a writer-director or just writer or what?
If his name is on the movie, I'm not gonna like it.
Have you seen She's Having a Baby? Because that's fantastic.
I saw a movie about a girl having a baby when I was in health class in 8th grade, and I feel like it was probably
That's not
better.
the same thing
I
at all.
think it was probably better. I may have turned green once when she had the baby.
Have you
but
seen Uncle Buck? Uncle Buck is a delight.
Okay, all right. Uncle Buck is a outlier compared to the rest of the cinematic world that is John Hughes.
Now, I think part of your hatred of John Hughes
Mhm.
also might be the fact that
Break me down,
He-
my
okay.
thought process.
he wrote comedies mostly.
Well,
Unless
I
you
mean
wanna
they're
count Curly Sue.
they're under the comedy section
Okay, well, that's exactly my point. Because you don't find them funny, right?
at all.
Because I think
I'm looking at you, Molly Ringwald.
like a lot of comedies,
Mhm.
they're very much of their time.
hmm
They are very 80s. They wear the 80s on their sleeve, except for like Uncle Buck.
Mhm.
Uncle Buck seems a little more timeless.
Right.
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. There's a
There's-
scream outside. That was weird.
I don't know if that was an enjoyable scream or a murder scream, but we're not going to
I
find out.
don't know. But I think the fact that you have, comedy which is incredibly subjective, that takes place in the 80s, which automatically dates itself,
Mhm.
and isn't making a statement about something kind of like the way, Blazing Saddles did, right? Combined with the sentimentality and the nostalgia of being a teenager and making the problems that you face as a teenager seem just as important as adult problems might skew your view a bit, especially since the families usually depicted in those movies are the Norman Rockwell kind of
White people.
nuclear family, and not a tale out of school that wasn't really your background, right?
Were there even background actors that were black? I need to know this.
The dancers
No,
and
exactly.
the dancers and Ferris
Exactly.
Bueller. dancers-
Unbelievable.
Well, they were.
Thanks, you racist John Hughes.
Hey, they took place in Chicago. Oh crap!
What's up, John Hughes?
Yeah.
I said it. You're like that old director that was racist.
All of them.
Yes, all of them. Indeed.
Okay. God, there's so many.
Give me something that's overrated. What do you think?
There are so many overrated.
Stop
movies.
looking at my shirt when you think about it.
No, because you're the only one who overrates it. I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna blanket this.
Do it.
French New Wave.
Okay,
French New
I
Wave.
can get on board with that.
I don't care that you love movies
Mhm.
and that movies to you is life
Right.
and that you made a movie about loving movies. Have a plot. You're doing something new, great. Have a plot. I am not a fan of French New Wave in the least. Maybe I haven't seen enough, but man, I don't like it. Like Jules at Jim put me to sleep in the theater.
How do you feel about Band of Outsiders, Tarantino's, Holy Grail that he called his production company after?
Never saw it.
Me either. And that's why
Yeah.
French New Wave is overrated, because I couldn't even get myself to watch Tarantino's favorite French
Right.
New Wave film because I just don't care.
Yeah. And besides, if we're going to talk about movies that inspired him, more than French New Wave, you have to look at spaghetti westerns and every Asian cinema made from like 1960 through 1980.
Indeed. Indeed, that is true. I'm also going to talk about something that we've talked about before that you are not going to mint as overrated, but is overrated nonetheless. It's superhero movies. Superhero
For the
movies
most part, yeah.
are overrated
Yeah.
because they're not rewatchable. We go to watch them in the theater once.
There are a few that are rewatchable. A few.
A very select few.
Superman the movie is incredibly rewatchable.
What year was that made?
1978.
All right. So,
Wait, this 40-year-old movie?
right. The new ones are big and bold and fun to watch in the
potato
theater, but they are not rewatchable. They're not enjoyable films. They're fun visual cues of excitement.
It's fast food.
Yes.
It's not something you sit down and savor and immediately go, oh, I want to plan my next trip back and really enjoy this. It's one of those where kind of like, McDonald's. It's like, I've got 3 minutes and it's close by and I need to eat. I'm going to grab it. I can't think of something else to watch and it's getting late. Ant-Man is on Netflix. Let's go ahead and watch it again.
Let's do that, yeah.
They're not bad. They're empty calories.
And that makes them overrated.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you on that. Okay, I'm going to go for my biggest overrated movies.
Hit me.
And there's like 22 of them.
Well, we'll see. Hit me.
James Bond. Oh, my Lord. James Bond, except for like 3 movies, I cannot stand them.
That series doesn't even exist to me.
They are ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell everyone who you are a bad spy.
Sure.
And Goldfinger is fun just because it's kind of the quintessential one. Casino Royale, I think, is a really good movie. And they actually address the whole telling everyone you're Bond thing. But on the whole,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about an elderly British spy pretending to fight who's not fighting well and hooking up with women a third his age and using gadgets that don't exist. They bore me to death.
A bit of a reach on those films.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. But I might as well stick with the British theme that you're talking about there and go and let everybody know that the Kingsman, there's garbage.
Yeah.
There's really bad garbage. And then there's the Kingsman. The fact that got a second movie made, it kind of
Paul Blart got a second movie.
melts my mind. Well, I mean, Guy Ritchie gets to keep working in films. I love Guy Ritchie as a human being, but Guy Ritchie as a filmmaker is definitely overrated. Because, somebody call in right now. Call in right now and tell me what a good Guy Ritchie film is since Snatch.
I'm going to give you 2 movies that were huge when I was in film school
Mm-hmm.
that are both incredibly
What was
overrated.
that, 1983?
Yeah. 2001 through 2005.
Mm.
Okay?
Supposedly.
Right. Donnie Darko, which, not good. It's really not. And the more he tries to explain it, the worse it gets. And Memento. Memento has no rewatch value. You can kind of figure it out. Especially if someone's seen it and you haven't. They're like, oh, you're never going to believe what it is. Then you automatically get it. And honestly, it is a gimmick. It doesn't, I think, hold up as a narrative on its own. Same thing with Sixth Sense. You watch it the first time, you're like, oh, I didn't see the twist coming. You watch it the second time, and you're like, oh, he's not talking to her here. Neat. Watch it the third time, you fall asleep. And you look like you want to murder me right now. Did I mention 2 of your favorite movies?
No, you said Donnie Darko. I'm not going to defend Memento. But if we want to go back to Donnie Darko for a second, we're not talking about the director's
Donnie
cut.
Darko the first time I saw it. And then I saw the director's cut and
Doesn't count.
listened to the commentary.
Doesn't
He
count.
was talking about a movie that doesn't exist. The theatrical cut.
You cannot believe a pretentious 27-year-old USC grad. You, of all people, should know that. You got to give him like another 7 years and now talk to him.
Right, but my point is he made a movie, and the movie that he thought he made is completely different. And I think it's overrated because, honestly, when was the last time someone came up to you and was like, that's my favorite movie in the world? It happened all the time in like 2003. But when was the last time you really watched it again?
I watched it with him 3 months ago in the theater. So, 3 months. To answer your question, 3 months.
You're wearing a Vincent Gallo shirt. I can't win this argument. I just can't.
And just so people know, I wanted to give one more thing. Citizen Kane, overrated. Stop watching it. It's ridiculous. Take it off the list.
Can we at least admit the first half is incredibly interesting and one of the most technologically impressive movies, especially at the time. Second half, I'll give you, is boring. The first half, up until he goes off on his trip to Europe, it's fantastic.
Screw you, Orson Welles. Again, here we are, sitting across from each other.
Was this episode like 30?
Ending another conversation. This is episode 528.
All right.
We skipped past 520-something of those, but that's okay. We've made it here.
Of them.
We have made it here, and we didn't die.
Well, we haven't made it out, though.
Do you miss the ghosts in the studio?
I kind of do. I was going to ask you before we started if we could go back to the red light. Because for some reason, I think that had a better, mellower vibe, and these are really harsh.
It's like we're in interrogation in here.
Speaking of.
Yes, that's. We'll talk about interrogation movies next time. But in the meantime,
that'd be a good one.
We talked good things today, I think.
I think we did, and we didn't kill each other.
What do we want to tell the people? What have you been enjoying this last week or two so that people can watch?
I've tried to watch a lot of things, but I actually got through all of Glow, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling.
Indeed, I do.
And while it's not perfect, and Allison Brie kind of bothers me, Mark Maron is amazing in it.
So good.
And it's worth watching just for him. The series definitely picks up around halfway through and gets good. And I'm kind of surprised it takes 7 episodes before we get an 80s montage. A little disappointed in that.
That's true.
But, give it a try. Give it a try.
I went to watch Baby Driver yesterday.
Yeah.
Depending on what day you listen to this, it was yesterday.
I've seen that Saturday.
And I would say thank you for making films like that. I don't care if you like it or dislike it or it's good or it's bad. Give me something unique. Give me something interesting. That's definitely what this is. Edgar Wright has done great films from Shaun of the Dead to A Hot Fuzz.
He makes me feel bad about myself when I watch his movies.
His energy is just electric in his films.
There are very few things keeping Scott Pilgrim from being a perfect movie. I think one of them is Michael Cera, and then the ending's another. But every time I watch that movie, the technique behind it and the planning and the editing, everything about it, I feel worse because as a filmmaker, I go, wow, I could never do this.
That is where my brain doesn't go. And I love it, and thank you, Edgar Wright, for being that way.
Yeah.
So there we go. Thank you, people, again for listening. We're on the social medias.
At MattMenPod.
There you go.
And MattMenPod.com.
Bingo, bango. You can download us there. You can listen to us on iTunes. You can use your aggregate podcast thing like Podcast Addict, which I do, and listen to it there and download it. Say nice things to us or say mean things to us. I do not care. Just give
say
us
stuff.
Say something. If you want to start a protest against us, I would love that. I've always wanted to be protested against.
How about this? Meanest comment we will respond to in the next episode.
Excellent.
I love that.
Love it. So until then,
I'm Matt.
And I am the other one.
See ya.
Later.